Hey, Spuddies, PotatoMcWhiskey here, and welcome to Humankind. This is the Victor Open Dev, and we're going to spend a little bit of time with it here today, because apparently the game has actually had a ton of updates and rebalances. Now, I don't think there was any patch notes per se, so I couldn't tell you specifically what has changed. But supposedly they've actually addressed what were some of my biggest concerns with the game, which was a lot of economy imbalance that I had some concerns about. One problem I had with the game was that the growth rate of your cities was a bit disconnected from the food. And checking that out a little bit later, we'll actually see that some of that sort of stuff has been changed. You can see here what I'm doing in the background is I was just hunting a deer, and that has actually given me 5 out of 20 food, which means we'll be able to grow ourselves another tribe. Tribes are your basic sort of Neolithic unit that is used to explore the map, because unlike in other 4X games, you don't settle a city on turn 1. You actually settle your city quite a few turns into the game, and you have to go around and achieve some objectives. We have 3 objectives. We can either get a growth star, which is by having 5 population, a knowledge star, which is like the exploration reward if you find 10 curiosities, which do actually give you science that you can use in the next era. If you get enough of these, you can basically 1-turn attack, which is really cool. Or you can kill 3 animal units. I would say that the growth star is like, you kind of want to do them all, but depending on which one you prioritize, like the hunter star, that's like the rush. Like, I want to get a settlement now. That's what you would go for. You go for the hunter star. The growth star is like, I kind of want to have a really strong set of units and population before I actually settle my city. And then the knowledge star is like, I want to explore really widely but not fall behind in science, so I'm going to actually do a lot of exploration. But in the course of achieving all of these, you tend to do all of the other ones. Now, because we're nomadic, we actually do heal on the move, and we have these like little curiosity things here that gave me nuts. That was worth 10 food, which of course is super helpful for growing more population. Now, there is another deer here that I could kill, but my population's a little bit low right now, so I'm actually going to run off and see if I can pick up this food before I try to attack this deer, because I think I would actually lose this fight. And, maybe on the top 10 most embarrassing things that could happen in Humankind is losing your very first settler / tribesman to a deer. Now that we have 2 guys, we actually have the option. We could split them up to, go ahead and check out more of the map, or we can keep them together to try to fight bigger and bigger game, because we can fight things like mammoths, or we could take on multiple deer. I think I will try to take on this deer here, and I'm going to try to position myself in an advantageous location to actually fight it, like over here, where I'm slightly more towards the elevated terrain, and then I can attack the deer. And we should have less problems because we have elevated and equal land. Let's go ahead and attack it from the high ground. You can see there's just like this kind of ridgeline gray, browny stuff that like indicates that there's a hill, and you tend to get a really big combat bonus from being uphill. So defending uphill in this game is massive, as is being on a river. Rivers have super negative effects on your combat outcomes. Oh, the deer has retreated to an even worse position, but by hunting the deer we actually pick up 5 food and 5 influence. Influence is what you use to found settlements and claim territory, which you can do right from the start of the game. And if we want to look for somewhere that we might be worth claiming, we could turn on the yields map mode and have a look. You're going to want to find somewhere with good food and production, like maybe this tile right here. If I click on these guys and then click on the outpost, it'll actually even highlight places that it thinks would be a good place for an outpost. Like there's really good growth in production over here, there's really good growth in production over here. Or more so growth over here. So if I wanted to grow a really big city really quickly, I might settle there. Whereas if I wanted to actually build my city quickly, settling here would be quick. Because you can see here, it's 2 turns until the outpost would be completed. Whereas this one would take 8 turns. So I might actually place this one down first, because I imagine it's going to take us about 6 or 7 turns to actually finish off this era. Now I'm wondering, when you split tribes, do they split the food? Or yeah, one of them. So I'm going to go pick up that food right there, and then see if we can fight that mammoth by conjoining my troops together real quick. So if we kill that mammoth, we could instantaneously settle down, which we're not going to do, but also killing the mammoth will actually give us a decent chunk of food right here. Now you can see here the mammoth is quite a bit stronger than my 2 units, but I do have 2 units, which means I have twice as much health to sort of spend on attacks, and I can whittle him down better. Now it would be better if I was in elevated terrain, because mammoths can do pretty crazy damage. Right there, I just took a 30 hit. So I'm actually going to take this unit and click defend here. That'll give it a combat strength bonus. So when the mammoth attacks, it'll actually be taking a bit more combat strength, and I'll attack with my 2nd unit to try to equalize the health. Hunting a mammoth is not an easy game. But there you go. He is down to where he is in one-shot territory. Now, I could lose a tribesman to this. One option I have is to defend on both of my units and see if the mammoth decides to attack. And it did, and I got the kill. Awesome, because of the extra combat strength from defense. And killing a mammoth is a big deal. You get 20 food, which is basically like instantly getting an extra pop, and 20 influence, which is super important because influence is what you use to settle cities. And because we've hunted 3 animals, we can now enter into a new era. I'm gonna do this a little bit later. I'd like to explore a little bit more, but I do have the hunter star now, which is nice. I'm gonna take this fresh guy and send him over here to maybe look into settling. We also picked up a bit of stuff here. Now, could I drop somewhere? We've got an 18. Oh, that looks like a great spot. It's kind of on top of a curiosity here, but you can see it's 12 food and 15 production. So I'm definitely going to drop an outpost right there. Oh, we found Mount Roraima. That's incredible. So we actually get score from that. And that's one of the things that this game does very differently from something like Civ. Because in Civ, in order to win the game, you have to sort of achieve a discrete objective, like a space race. Whereas in this game, the victory condition is a little bit more fuzzy. Rather than like achieving a particular discrete objective, your goal is to sort of, you know, achieve multiple things throughout the game, which means you can actually kind of switch up how you play your civilization as the game progresses, which I find is really, really cool. It's a part of the game that I love. If I go up here, you can see I could pick a new civ, but if I click on the fame mode here, you can actually see that I have 90 fame. And in fact, I am in first in terms of fame right now. But I would like to get at least 1 more population here, so I could pick up a little bit of extra fame. I don't think I'll go for the knowledge stars. I personally, I really like going for the extra pop and the hunter star. It can be worth it to go for all 3 stars, but I think getting at least 2 of the stars is the way to go about the early game. Now, one thing about natural wonders like Mount Roraima is that they give you +5 influence, and influence is a massively important resource in this game, because again, it's how you found cities, it's how you make bigger cities, all that sort of stuff. So I think that's going to be something I sort of push towards. So while I will pop a unit here and drop an outpost because it has really good food and production, which means it'll be a good starter outpost, I may actually head up towards here and see if I can claim Mount Roraima for that extra influence per turn. So that's a pretty big deal. I'll grab this curiosity for a bit of extra science as well. I'm going to keep these guys together because they can protect each other and be safe. There's another sanctuary over here that I might look into clearing. But I'd say we're getting very close to wanting to settle here. I spotted another mammoth over here. Let's see if we can get all of our guys together to go take that out. The cool thing is, if you move onto a river, it takes up all your movement, but the next turn, you should actually be able to move along the river pretty easily. So rivers kind of act like roads in a way. It's not a perfect comparison. It's just that moving onto a river is quite difficult. But once you're on the river, you can move along the river quite easily, because it's almost like your people embark upon the river. It's a mechanic that I super appreciate. So in one turn here, this nomadic tribe will, in fact, finish. And now it is actually a sort of outpost. It's growing. It grows population. It's going to grow another pop in 4 turns. And I believe, if I so choose, I can actually turn it into a city if I pick a culture, which I will do very, very soon. Let's go ahead and ransack this sanctuary. It'll give us 20 food, which is basically another tribesman, which means we got our next growth star. And then we can maybe go ahead and found our capital city by picking a culture. So we got our growth star. We have a ton of units. I think this is the spot that I want my outpost. It's probably not the best spot on this area, but it will only take 4 turns to turn this into a city. And now that we own this, we're actually getting +5 influence for owning that natural wonder. And I had a quick like 5-10 minute test game, and I know there's like another natural wonder over here to the east, but I'm going to focus on just Mount Roraima here. It looks like we got one of the random events, a World of Flame. I'm not going to read this out, but basically it gives you a couple of choices on how you want your civilization to develop. I'm going to go ahead and pick up the chase. So this will give me another hunting party unit, a tribe, which is very cool. I should be able to take this deer on without any trouble, so I'm just going to instant battle resolve. And there we go, we auto won. We picked up another 5 food and 5 influence. And I think I'd like to kill one of these mammoths before I advance. There's no point doing it this turn. Let's group all these guys up and then attack the mammoth. This should be an instant resolve and we shouldn't lose any units. Should take some damage, but again, we pick up 20 food, another hunting party, and some influence, which is fantastic. Let's go ahead over here and pick our culture. There are a ton of cultures to pick from, and they all have different abilities and stuff. Like the Babylonians, really good at science and food and growth. But they also have a very aggressive unit that requires copper. Egyptians, more production and big city building, right? They're all about building wonders. They're all about building these quarters that give extra production and influence and stuff like that. The Harappans are all about growth. The Hittites are kind of more warlock. The Hittites are just kind of more warlike. All their units get combat strength and they can build special outposts. Now the Olmecs are really cool because they actually get a lot of influence, which will allow you to expand really wide. And so I think I'm going to go with the Olmecs because they have a very good defensive unit that doesn't require any strategic resources. It does require technology, but I like these guys because they're good at expanding. I want to try to play super wide today, so I think the influence is going to be a big boon there. So I think when I end the turn here, we should actually become our new culture. You're introduced, every time you change your culture, you get this lovely little movie. We've kind of seen it before on this channel, so I'm going to skip it today. Really today is about sort of re-exploring the game and re-engaging with the mechanics and seeing if, you know, the changes they've made to it does make it feel different to the first couple of incarnations of the game that I played. And really also trying to ascertain whether this will actually be a game comparable to Civ. I think this game does sort of indirectly issue some pretty interesting criticisms of the Civilization games as a genre. One of those criticisms is like not having a discrete victory condition, only playing a sort of rigid fixed culture throughout the entire game. Now we're pretty close to another civilization that seems to be settling down over here, but I will go ahead and build my city right here. And you can see it instantaneously becomes a city and we get a ton of extra new yields, science, production, food, all that sort of stuff. We're only one turn away from getting our first population. I think our big focus early game will probably be to get our production and our science up. But we have access to some really interesting things. The Olmec Head, the Farmer Quarter, and the Maker's Quarter. Each of these has a unique ability. The Farmer's Quarter, for example, is really good at naturally exploiting food on terrain and giving you extra growth. You see here, if I turn on the Fidzy impact here, you can see that a lot of this terrain has food on it. So this would be the sort of direction that I would certainly consider building my farmer's quarters in, to be able to exploit this terrain effectively, which is what it's called when you're working the terrain. Because let me just exit the city screen here. And you can see there's actually a visually distinct difference between tiles that your civilization is working and tiles you aren't. You can see tiles that my civilization is working has farms and infrastructure and stuff like that. And if I were to go ahead and place a farm here, it will actually, when this is finished, start working all of these tiles adjacent to it, at least the food yields. Because in order to extract food from a tile, you need to build a district that extracts food. And the farmer's quarter, you can see here it says resource exploitation food. It's quite good at exploiting food out of the ground, whereas something like the Maker's Quarter is better for getting the production out of the ground. So while I could technically build a farm over here, I would lose 3 production and gain 5 food. But if I were to build the Maker's Quarter here instead, I would lose 3 food and get 8 production. And the game is very helpful. It kind of highlights the tiles that it thinks are good. You can see here it has like a little symbol over here that says maybe you should build it that direction. Or when I select the Maker's Quarter, it's like one of these 2 choices is interesting. Now, one of the things you lose here is stability. And stability is important because if the stability of a city is too low, you can't really expand it anymore. It's going to have trouble expanding the districts and stuff like that. So stability is going to be something you want to keep in mind. But I'm going to go for more of a growth-oriented strategy here to try to get my population up a little bit so I could work things like gold and science and also pick up a ton of extra influence from the Olmec head because I plan to put that next to my farmers' quarters to pick up as much bonus adjacency there as I can. I think I'm going to open up with carpentry because that'll give me access to my javelin throwers, which are a really, really strong early game unit, and I'll also be able to build a lumberyard, which will help boost my productivity. This also allows you to clear forests. I'm going to check that out. The last time I tried it, it seemed really, really anemic and ineffective of a thing to pursue. But it is something that your scouts can do, so I think it would be interesting to give it a shot. And there's a lovely menu down here in the bottom that kind of gives you alerts about how your civilization is developing. You can see here we have gained a population, and now we have a pop here that we can kind of move around. We can choose to, for example, work in food and grow faster. One of the big changes of this update that I alluded to earlier is that actually the rate that your city grows kind of more directly scales with the amount of food you're getting. And I think the system they had previously was interesting, but it didn't feel intuitive or good as a player to, you could have theoretically 500 food coming into a city and it would still grow as if you only had a plus 50 food surplus. So I think this sort of scaling is a little bit better. Now, I'm currently only getting like 3 research per turn, so I really do feel like this guy is best plugged into here because that will triple my science rate and allow me to pick up these techs so much faster. In fact, let's take a moment to look at and appreciate the technology screen. Look at this: calendar, domestication, carpentry, city defense. All these techs sort of feed into each other and provide benefits. For example, the pottery workshop gives you influence on your main plaza, and the stoneworks gives you extra industry on stone fields and rocky fields, but it does require copper. So probably want to pick up calendar to be able to build an artisan's quarter, which will allow me to extract things like strategic and luxury resources. Although, actually, where is the thing that extracts strategic resources? I don't remember where that is. Or maybe you can just extract strategics instantly. But there's like a whole tech tree here that we're potentially going to be able to explore here. Now that we're no longer tribal, our scouts are a little bit stronger, so we're actually going to be able to take on these deer much easier. So I'll go ahead and instant battle resolve here. And now, instead of getting food and influence, killing wildlife actually gives us gold. So it's still a really good idea to have these scouting parties sort of running around, being active on the map, doing things like hunting or ransacking, essentially barbarian villages, because the wildlife in this game sort of take the place of something like barbarians in Civilization. And it looks like, in terms of a matter of diplomacy, one of our neighbors has actually settled and founded a civilization. This is Mycenae. Let's go ahead and talk to them.
As the leader of a great people, to greet you in their name.
Now, the Mycenaeans are traitorous, which means they're more likely to break your treaties and go to war and stuff like that. They're extroverts, so they are interested in developing relationships with other civilizations, but they're also vindictive, so they're hesitant to forget any transgressions you make. Now, this makes this a very interesting neighbor to have, because he's likely to be sort of exuberant and friendly, but also capricious and unforgiving and very backstabby. So this is someone who you want to have a good relationship with, but you probably want to have, your fingers crossed behind your back when you're dealing with him. Let's see if he will actually agree to an open or only trade luxuries agreement, because right now we have no trade. So this means our relationship has improved and changed, and we can now actually, if we had any luxuries, we could trade them, which is cool. I fully suspect this guy is going to declare war on me at some point, or at the very least attack me in neutral territory, because that tends to be a theme of these Amplitude Studio games, is the AI, when they kind of play like players, right? They try to take opportunities to damage and hurt you in ways that you maybe weren't expecting. Now, we currently have 84 influence, which isn't quite enough to found another city. And something we may want to look into doing is continuing to use our influence to make these outposts, because outposts are actually very, very valuable. They give you claims and control of land. So if I were to slap down a few of these outposts here, it would, kind of slow down and block the expansion of the Mycenaeans and give me much better control of this northern area. There is a luxury in here, but it's a luxury I already have. I'd be far more interested in maybe finding a source of copper to claim. But it is also only 20 influence to found this, so I think I will throw down a quick outpost right here. Now the outpost over here has actually developed, and the really, really cool thing is, before this becomes a city, we can actually still develop the land. For example, if we get the technology to, exploit horse resources, we can actually build a pasture thing here to actually get those luxury or those strategic resources. And the same is true for the luxury resources. Now we will have to research a technology, in particular calendar, to actually do that. But I like this sort of pre-city phase of development. Now each strategic resource has its own effect. So for example here, salt gives you +5 food on all of your cities per salt, as well as +5 stability, and every district you build takes 10 stability, so that's actually working out very nice for me because I actually have 2 copies of salt. Whereas, for example, if we take a look at the sage over here, this only gives you stability on all your cities. Something like pearls gives you +2 money per traders on pearls, and +5 stability on all your cities. So again, they all have their own sort of unique effects, but they tend to be fairly thematic with the resource itself. I'm going to keep 2 of my scouts around here to defend until I can get some archers, especially because I'm next to a very capricious and dangerous AI. But otherwise I can send the rest of my scouts, and I do recommend, a lot of people, they send them off in one parties. I found in this game, your units, like the AI is way more aggressive and way more likely to attack single and lone units out in the wild. So I tend to like to move them in pairs because that gives you that little bit of defense. I'm going to go ahead and buy the farmer's quarter here so you can see this. We're growing in 6 turns. I spent 33 gold to buy that, and now we're going to grow in 3. And using your gold like this is actually a pretty big part of the game. I am going to have to deal with this elephant at some point. Now every time you build a district, well, unsurprisingly your districts get more expensive, so that's something you're going to want to keep an eye out for. I think I will therefore go ahead and get myself a maker's quarter to build up the production of this city. We've got carpentry now, so we can begin getting our javelin throwers. Now the unfortunate thing about javelin throwers is they do take a population to train, but they are very, very strong units. See, this is one part of the game I would like to see an adjustment again. Chopping down forests has such like a low value return. You can see here, if I look at these tiles, these forests could potentially be a +3 production tile if I were to build the lumberyard here, right? The +2 industry on forest would make this a 3 production tile. I could chop it for 10 production, which basically means if I were to build that lumberyard, I don't even have to like exploit this tile for 3 turns and then I've made profit. So I do think that the chopping thing is an interesting mechanic that it kind of feels like the current implementation is an afterthought, and I'd like to see that get changed. Now, ideally, right now, I'm looking for somewhere that I could maybe settle down to grab a new resource, but especially copper, because copper is like your early game military resource, and a few buildings require it too. Oh, nice! Empire Foundation. So this is a civic choice, and you get these sort of periodically throughout the game, and you'll have to make some sort of choice. For example, do you go the faith route, which will bring your civilization more through a traditionalist sort of lens, or do you go for the influence from your main plaza, which will bring you towards more of a progress kind of a lens? And I think I'm going to go for the progress here because, again, I want as much influence as possible so I could found as many cities as possible. Now, one thing I haven't talked about as well is when you advance to a new era, guess what? You get more era star missions. So, for example, right here, the expansionist star means we should own 5 territories attached to any city, including the city's territory. And that will net us 100 score. Same with the builder stars. If we build 6 districts, we'll get 100 score. Another one is have 10 population and or units within your empire, which is more score. And you want to achieve 7 of these. Each of them can be achieved 3 times with increasing difficulty before you can advance to the next era. And so this will sort of happen naturally as you play throughout the game, but it's also something you can kind of push for. Right now I'm pushing quite hard for this Science Star and the Expansionist Star alongside a little bit of the Influence side of things. I think my next big tech pickup here is Calendar, so I can build the Artisan's Quarter and the Granary. I definitely like how it's feeling so far. When I was playing some of the earlier builds, I would be around turn 30 and feel like I was already snowballing out of control, where it definitely feels like it's been rebalanced and slowed down a bit to where it doesn't feel quite as crazy as it did previously. Now, it could be a matter of I'm actually just playing really badly right now. It still requires a little bit of examination. And I also need to kind of, sort of bite the bullet and come to a decision about, is this game comparable to something like Civilization? And I think it is. And I think it really does have the potential to again, upset the genre a little bit and change things up in a way that maybe players weren't expecting. They do a lot of things really, really differently. And I think there's a different philosophy behind the design of this game. Now, I think it's going to be a harder sell to play this kind of game. But my one concern of it is that maybe Humankind is a game for people who are tired of Civ, but not necessarily a game for everyone, which Civ kind of is, right? Pretty much anyone can pick up Civ, and it's a very simple, straightforward game. Whereas this one already, I feel like it throws quite a bit of complexity at you right from the get-go. There's a lot going on in the UI, and a lot changes even moving around. Whereas in Civ, you kind of just look at the map from like this kind of an angle, and things are relatively static and self-contained and not sprawling. This game definitely has a more epic feel right now. And I'm wondering if that will make it harder for people not familiar to the genre to actually get into it. I think, if they do get into it, they'll have a great time, because personally, I'm amazed that this game is so good. And it's not even finished, right? And they even delayed the game, which is crazy to me, because I was like, man, this game is ready. So it's crazy to me, the standard that they have, that they were like, no, you know what, the game isn't ready. We're gonna delay it. We're gonna wait longer. We're gonna try to add more development. We're gonna increase our resources and stuff like that, and polish off a few things. And maybe they made the right call, because as I'm looking at this updated sort of look at the game, it definitely has a nicer feel. It feels like some of the rough edges have been kind of rounded off. Now, we can go either the Authority route here, or the Liberty route. The Liberty route will increase the combat strength of all of our units, or the Authority route will make our units cheaper. And I kind of like the idea of having slightly stronger units. +1 combat strength is actually a pretty big bonus. Now, we get civic points pretty regularly, but the thing is, you're always going to have multiple choices. So, for example, one of the things I'm going to have to make a decision about is legitimacy, but I also have to make a decision about army composition that I was just looking at. And more of these choices are going to unlock as I complete certain objectives in the game. And I'm only going to have so many civic points to sort of steer my civilization, which means that there's a lot of really kind of interesting choices in here. Not only because, the choices between different policies are valid in multiple different scenarios, but because you may not have all the choices available to you to take the ones that you think are perfect for your playstyle. So you have to maybe choose, like, do I wait until I maybe do have that? Or do I, for example, just pick something that is maybe a little bit suboptimal and gamble that will have been a better choice in the short term, and that I won't just unlock the one that I need immediately. Now, I'm thinking I would like to maybe box these guys in a little bit. So I think I'd like to claim this piece of territory over here and this piece of territory over here. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time looking for a very nice place to plop down an outpost. I think right there is a perfectly acceptable spot. Now, they're not going to be happy with me doing this, which is fairly understandable. And I'm also considering making this outpost that I place here sort of joining it on to my capital, which is something you could do in the game. In fact, you know what? I think I will do that. Let's sort of explore that idea. Now, because I'm joining this on, it doesn't need to be self-sufficient. I can actually just go really hardcore and settle on this river, for example, for all of these forests and pick up a ton of production, which I think is exactly what I'm going to do. So this will take 2 turns to develop, and then I should be able to attach it to my city. You see here, when I click on the city, I have the option to attach some of these, and I probably will do a little bit of attaching. Nice, I picked up a curiosity in that research calendar for me, which gives me a chance to show off stuff like this, where I can come in here and actually start building the sage in my outposts. Now, it does take a while to build, but you always have the option to quick purchase that with your gold income. And gold in this game does feel very, very important. I'm curious, is there a better spot to move this to? I do wish there was like a little bit better sort of info on moving your cities around. I think I picked a fairly suboptimal location here, but I'll go ahead and get to work on that. It'll take 15 turns. I'll probably purchase it. Now, we're getting really good science, and we also picked up a curiosity, which has boosted us along here. And I think it would be good to pick up horses because we do have access to a horse resource, and it'll also allow us to build things like animal barns, which will give us +5 food per horse, as well as scout riders, which uses horse resources to actually make a very basic scout cavalry unit. But also it might be totally valid to pick up city defense here and start building watchtowers and warriors, and I like that route to try to protect against the Mycenaeans. So we have city defense now. If I come over to my city, you could see I could build watchtowers. This gives you extra vision on your garrisons and on your plazas. And we also have the ability to build palisades, which gives the city some fortification. And it'll basically build a wall around all of these little quarters that I'm building. I'm also going to spend some cash here to finish the Maker's Quarter instantly. Should have done that a while ago, but, you know, sometimes you're talking about the game and you get distracted. And I would like to get an Olmec head here. You can see here the stability of the city is starting to decrease, so I will want to pick up some luxuries and strategic soon. But I think I can get away with placing down one more district before that becomes a real problem. Now we're up to 2 population in here. I could pull this guy off, and we would grow slightly slower. And I think picking up the gold here is the right move. And then I'll probably follow this up by building something like a granary and then actually working the farmer slots. It's like, I like that there's so many ways and means of choosing how you develop your cities and your empire, and every decision sort of ripples out and has effects on different areas of the game. It definitely has, it nails the feel of a 4X game very well. So now we've got the little settlement of Icklil here. Let's go ahead and head over to San Lorenzo. And I want you to take a moment to appreciate the current yields of this city. It's about 524.99. And if I go ahead and attach this now, it's very cheap in terms of influence, but it effectively turns this second territory here into being fully a part of San Lorenzo. And you'll see all the yields up here increase massively as a correlation. Now you can eventually detach this if you want. I haven't actually really figured out why you would do that yet. I'm still exploring the game. But now this effectively acts like a second city center. You get, you know, influence from the tile, you get science, you get production, and you can actually build more quarters off of it. But the downside is, kind of like a district, it does also impact the stability of my city, which is rapidly declining. So I'm going to have a really hard time building up my cities without increasing my stability. The Harappans over here would actually like to get a non-aggression pact with me, and I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And I'm even going to propose maybe sharing our maps to see how they feel about that. So they refused that. So we haven't quite built up the kind of relationship with them that they would like there. And I'm always trying to be wary of what the Mycenaeans are up to, because I do have a couple of very vulnerable outposts over there. So once this Olmec head is finished, it's 100% military production time for me. We did actually find another natural wonder, so it could be super worth it to build an outpost over here. It would only be about 50 influence, but it would actually give me +5, so it would pay itself off pretty quick. But I also need to be considering about, like, when and where am I building my next city? I like the idea of maybe making a really good coastal trade city here and expanding out this way with the city later. And then maybe setting up like a really, really well fortified area over here, because we don't have the natural choke points as much as we do down here. So it's much harder for the Mycenaeans to attack me through here. So I think if I were able to place like a fortress here and a fortress over here, they really only have a couple of routes to attack me through, which they will attack me, by the way. Just, it's going to happen. All right, we got another event, and it's time to create a religion. We have polytheism here, which gives us a mixture of faith and influence from holy sites, but more sort of leaning on the faith side of things. Now, we're going for an influence-heavy game, so I think I'm going to go for shamanism here. And we also picked up an agrarian star, which I believe was having 10 population. Now, the important thing about these stars is you want to do them quick. Every turn that goes by, they go down a little bit, right? Because you're basically being slow. So you want to achieve these first, and you want to achieve them early. Now, the first star is worth 100, but the second star is worth 300, or 200, and then 300. So if I can get this third star really quick, which I imagine is around 30 to 40 population, I could be rolling in a ton of this fame, which is how you win the game, essentially. Again, you don't need to specifically look for a particular win condition. You're not maybe fishing for a science victory that you might do in, say, Civ, because this game takes a much less one-dimensional sort of way of viewing the route that a civilization sort of entrenches itself and becomes victorious. I think I'm going to claim this spot over here because it's beside two of these anomaly type features, right? These are hot springs that actually have science yields on their tiles, but it will actually require this to be a city in order for me to take advantage of those. And I will absolutely be trying to turn this into a city as fast as possible to pick up that extra science. We have met another player, and this is the Nubians, who I think are over here. So let's go ahead and introduce ourselves, which should sort of put a positive spin on our opening relationships. And let's go ahead and offer them a trading. So they refused our deal. That's okay. So they're less open to trade and stuff like that. I think I upset them by claiming a piece of territory next to them. But I think it has been a long time since we have upgraded our military. So I might spend a little bit of time picking up 2 javelin throwers who will assist the scouts in defending my territory. So the Nubians actually made the proposal that I wanted, so I'm going to go ahead and accept that. Keepers of the Creed. So this is sort of a decision. We can either choose to move towards progress or more towards tradition, or more heavily towards tradition. I think I like the idea of keeping my civilization on the progress direction. That kind of feels right to me, but how I'm playing, which is another thing that I'm kind of digging about the game. You can sort of choose a roleplay direction, and the game kind of encourages it. It doesn't block you from doing it. It doesn't tell you not to do that. And in fact, it rewards you for role-playing, which is something that is very nice. Now, I'm sure the more time I spend with the game, I'm going to figure out the optimal strategies and the things that break the game. But at least for now, I'm just doing my best to actually enjoy it. Nice, we got ourselves a scientist star by researching a technology, and you can see the points here are continuing to rapidly decrease. And technologies have actually become quite a bit more expensive. Although I think, is that just, it's because I actually lost, or my population was moved around here. So let's get these guys back onto a little bit of science to try and speed these up a bit. Very nice. We have our first unique unit out, and just look at those models. You can see these are kind of atlatl throwers, I think they are. They're very, very strong. They have 2 range, 20 strength, and they have 4 movement. So they actually pair quite well with the scouts. And I think to sort of spread out my military on the border with the Mycenaeans, I'm going to have these guys kind of work together with a scout and a javelin thrower. They kind of keep tabs on what they're up to and protect myself from them. All right, let's come over here and let's develop this into a city. Now, it does take about 10 turns to do, which can feel like a very, very long time. And I've actually completely forgotten to talk about the unique thing about every civ in the game is they typically have their own special abilities. So, for example, the Olmec have the Aesthete ability, or Astet ability, which gives you 2 unique actions. The Influence Bomb, which instantly converts a territory to your influence, regardless of values, and tourism yields go up as well. These actions can be triggered once the meter is filled, and the meter is filled according to your influence generation. So we could do a tourism yield. This will give us an economic advantage from having influence domination over territories. I think there is a way to check that, and I am completely blanking on how right now. Oh god, where's the culture map mode? There it is. So this is the Civics screen. So within your society panel, you can see your influence production. This is you can on the map you can check how much influence spread around the world. So you can see here, I'm actually very heavily influential over the Mycenaean territory, which I think could allow me to boost my tourism yields. If I were to click that there, you could see my gold per turn actually shot up there, because you do pick up a bit of gold from having territories in your sphere of influence. And by clicking that button, I actually increase that yield. And this will be active for 10 turns, which is really, really cool. And I can continue to influence people. Like, for example, I could maybe do some territory flipping up here to the northeast. The Mycenaeans want to get a non-aggression pact, but I should always be wary of any deal they propose to me, because, again, they are capricious and dangerous, to put it in very simple terms. Got our second range unit here, which means I feel like I can go back now to start doing a little bit of extra infrastructure. And I think I'd like to try to grow this city quite a bit now. So we'll get to work on a granary in here, which can be +2 food per farmer. Let's buy the granary. Kaplooey. Can I grow the city in 1 turn? No, but I can grow it pretty damn quick. I'm kind of tempted now to go hard on the growth. We're picking up a population roughly every 3 turns, and we have a good amount of river in the city, so something like flood irrigation could actually help us grow even faster. It would be nice to pick up the public fountain so we could get more stability, because we are kind of getting close to what I would consider our stability limit. But I think, man, it's hard to always know what to do, because I could also work on a holy site. I don't think I need more military right now. Nice, we got one of our Aesthete stars, which gives us extra score and another star. So we're only 3 away from potentially advancing to the next era. And we can advance, and we can even stay this actual culture if we so choose. I kind of like the idea of hanging around here in this era for a bit, maybe building up a little bit more score. I mean, I have a lot of score. I seem to be doing actually quite well in comparison to the AI, but I imagine the AI isn't anywhere near final at the moment. These guys are a little bit hurt. Let's send them back to get healed up, because I don't think these scout units can actually heal on the move. Let's get this artisan's quarter done a little bit sooner, and then we can also start picking up these horses, because they'll be pretty valuable. I'll insta-purchase those, because that'll give me a builder star. And we're only 1 star away from checking out the next era. Let's do an influence bomb on Nubia over here. We'll go ahead and pop that down here, and now we are in fact the most influential over this, and we should be picking up even more territory influence. Tourism gold. I'm not exactly sure how that mechanic works, but it seems fairly straightforward. Oh, very cool. So they have silver, silk, and incense, and I can actually go ahead and buy those. Now I do need a trade license in order to do that. I don't know how trade licenses work. I assume it costs a certain amount of money, but it doesn't say how much it is. I have to come back here and check this out. Now they're a little bit upset that I claimed some territory on their border. Let's see here, this is one of their grievances. They haven't quite made it a demand, which is fine, but they do have a little bit of war support, so I need to be careful that they perhaps would, like to maybe start something over here. I don't really have a very good defense over here. I just have these 2 scouts. This is a very precarious and weak part of my empire, which is one of the dangers of going quite wide in this game. So we have 3 choices to make in 3 turns when it comes to civics. We just got religious rights, so they want me to unlock procession, but that can spend money in order to increase the stability of a city. That could be a very interesting ability to have rather than building extra religious districts. I'm curious to see how that might actually pan out for us. Cool, there's bronze working, which gives us access to copper, as well as the ability to build garrisons, which are fortified districts that gives combat strength to units adjacent to the district, as well as the forge that gives me extra industry on copper in my maker's quarter, and the spearman unit, who is anti-cavalry and can hold off cavalry really well. So I do have a source of copper in my capital. I'm going to go ahead and prioritize that with gold to get that online, because that is a strategic and it gives me a little bit of science. See, I could go for riding here and pick up an extra civic point, as well as the market quarter and some food markets. Now, we're still, I would say, pretty early. I'd say we're into like the mid to late of this era, and we might want to start thinking about advancing. We do almost have the stars for it. But I think I'm actually quite happy to stay in this era for a while. My civilization isn't quite as developed as I would like. So we have to choose between animal magic, cats or ferrets. And that looks like ferrets modify us towards the social progress end of things. Let's go ahead and go for ferrets here. We will worship and or be friends with the noble ferret. Ooh, we could pick up the wheel here. So let's see here. Automatically creates roads between your cities and outposts. That would actually be really useful for being able to move my military around to defend. Capital City just picked up some more pop. Is it worth it to work all of these farm tiles? I'm curious to see if there's like growth overflow. And it does look like there is. So if I work all of these farming tiles, this city will grow very rapidly, which will hopefully translate into more money and science and all those other things. And I feel like growth right now actually is the thing to go for in here. Oh dear, the Mycenaeans, our relationship with them is starting to develop. Looks like they're afraid of me because my archetype is vindictive. I'm not sure where that archetype comes from, but we are trading resources with them, but they are much weaker than us. They are being absorbed into our sphere of influence, and they depend upon access to our resources. So I think we have kowtowed the Mycenaeans, which is very, very cool. So we've kind of got them boxed into a corner, which I'm quite happy about. And we're also about to finish the flood irrigation, which should, since I have a decent number of these river tiles in this city providing me with food, should give us a significant boost to the food income here and have this city grow very, very rapidly. Ooh, we got blooming state. We can vote in a new civic. Let's pop in here. We could go for army composition for extra unit strength. I think I'm strong enough for now. Celebrating status on new cities is good for stability. I don't know if I need that. I think I'd like to pick up procession so I can increase our stability. This is very much so a move towards collectivism rather than a move towards individualism. And it looks like each area of this thing actually has an effect on your city. So for example, being moved towards the collectivism end of the spectrum actually gives you plus 20 stability on all your cities, whereas being moved more towards the individualism end of the spectrum gives you extra money on your cities with less stability. And the same is true here with the world and homeland. The further you move towards world, the more food you get from alliances, whereas the further you move towards homeland, the more you get on your local food. Looks like some of the text descriptions here haven't been fully finished, but if we look at authority and liberty, for example, liberty gives you influence. Being in the middle seems to give you some stability, and then being on the extreme seems to give you some resistance to influence. Progress, on the other hand, if you move towards the tradition end of the spectrum, you get more faith. If you move towards sort of a balanced approach, you end up with more stability and faith. And then if you move towards progress, you start getting more stability. And then the further you move, you get a 10% science boost. So these decisions you make can have sort of wide-reaching consequences. Now, the Olmec's shamanism, we haven't actually built our holy shrine yet. It was probably the next thing I was going to go ahead and do, because I will have a second city in a couple of turns who should be able to contribute to the construction of the holy site, because the holy site kind of acts like a wonder. And I like the idea of having the holy site somewhere interesting that I could maybe build off of other districts, because that is something you could do. You can build other districts off of your holy site. It kind of acts like an outpost, and maybe it would be good to zoom out here and see if there's like good spots for anomalies. Like over here, there's some good food anomalies here that we might be able to, you know, nab for ourselves. Although we also could go for the aesthetic choice and put it on a hill. You can see here, only one city is participating in the construction, but there will be more cities soon. And I think it's about time that we got ourselves yet another city. Wait, this one doesn't seem to take influence. I'm very confused about that. Does it not? Oh, it does. Okay. So I think we're going to set up another city over here. Although if I cancel that, I do get all my resources back. That's interesting. Foreign war declared. So who has declared war? Interesting.
I think we can undertake a common venture.
So they would like to trade.
Do you agree?
I will accept that trade deal. We have a non-aggression pact.
Friend. This will be a blessing for all.
They have
parties.
marble. I could buy the
accept.
marble. 2 industry per workers per marble and 5 stability. How much is that? Let's see. You need enough money to buy resources, relationship, and things. So the transportation mode is land transport. The base price is 46. It costs a bit to transport. Trade routes can be broken by changes in the relationship or being ransacked by other empires. Let's buy this marble because that should, in theory, actually generate us some trade income. At least I would hope that that would be how that would work. Now, in terms of our religion, we have a few choices. So we could eschew gluttony, which would give us extra money on territories under our influence and extra holy sites. This would give us science. This would give us stability. This would give us influence, which I think kind of fits with our game plan. Or we could go for money from holy sites, science from holy sites, production from holy sites. I like the idea of going for smite unbelievers. That seems kind of very fun to go for here. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now, advancing your religion is actually based on how many people are following your religion. So right now we have shamanism, which gives us extra influence on holy sites, and smite unbelievers, which gives us extra influence on territories under our religion's influence. Now, our religion isn't super strong right now. I also forget how to show the religion screen. Here it is. Okay. You can see here, there's quite a few religious followers throughout the map, which is quite nice. And you can see here, I'm also quite culturally dominant over these areas. So I've earned enough stars to enter a new era, so I could start looking at maybe one of these societies that I want to advance to. But then again, like if I head over here to the fame screen, you know, nobody else is really close. If I hover over this, nobody's anywhere near, so I could probably delay this decision for a while and maybe fish to pick up a couple of extra stars here and extra fame by proxy. You know, we're not too far away from the agrarian states. We're not too far from picking up merchant stars or indeed scientist stars. We're quite far away from militarist, but I reckon we could pick up at least 4 more stars here and, you know, as a consequence, maybe like another 600 to 700 extra fame. The one thing I have to worry about now is that these guys do have warriors. So I'm going to start retreating back my scouts here to defend, because if they decide to attack me, I'm actually quite vulnerable over here. This city will probably spend quite a bit of time building up a military rather than an economy. Again, we're spread very wide, so we have to be very wary. One thing that happened is we also can use our influence to claim wonders. So, for example, we could build the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. This gives you 100 fame. It exploits all types of resources, and it extracts the luxury that it's on top of. We have the Pyramid of Giza, which makes all of your districts cheaper. The Temple of Artemis allows your units to regenerate, and your units ignore forest movement penalties. And then we also have Stonehenge, which is really good for your faith income as well as stability. I'm kind of interested in the Stonehenge here. The Pyramids of Giza is really good long term too, making those districts cheaper to build throughout the game. I like Stonehenge though. That's an interesting choice. I could also just build a city. I think I get another city developing here. I think that's the move. So let's start a city developing over here in this territory. And I may just go ahead and come into my capital and go ahead and attach another territory here to boost the city's population up. Because when you absorb a territory, you actually take the population from there. Now we're having a pretty balanced setup right now, and our production has increased massively as a consequence, and we're growing super fast. In fact, we may hit some sort of growth limit without building up the stability in more districts. We might have to spend some of our time making military just to make use of the population. It definitely feels like I'm getting to that snowbally point that I got in the couple of first iterations of this. but it's definitely happened a little bit later, right? It doesn't happen quite so soon in at least the Victor version of the open dev. Very nice. So we got all 3 of the estate stars, which means we're getting a ton of fame from that. I'm trying to like do my best to explain things as I go, but this video will get released. And if there's anything in particular that you're interested in me focusing on, like, I know I've spent a lot of time on the early game. I don't think Leventa can afford to help this city develop, actually. I think I just need a military unit in here, and I could purchase it. And I feel like a warrior or a spearman is like a pretty good choice here. Let's grab a javelin thrower. I think that's my unique unit. We'll pay for it. That does mean that the city is kind of crippled in terms of population, but I think it helps make the city useful. And then I'll absorb another territory in here to try to get Leventa to build up a little bit quicker. It may be the move to set up some fortifications. Like, I feel like a fortification right here or here basically gives me almost uncontested control of this high ground. Now, the cool thing is about the garrison is that it does give stability. So I don't need to build it right away. I could focus on building up the production here. Now, we are getting close to our administration limit. Right now, we can control 2 cities without any penalties. That's going to stop being true once this 3rd city develops. Let's grab Leventa and attach this territory down here to this south, which gives us the expansionist star, which is arguably, in my opinion, because this requires so much influence, it's actually quite a hard star to get. Although we do only need 3 more territories attached to a city. But this is one I find quite difficult to get myself. I've got the wheel now, and you can see there's some very nice little roads running between my territories now. And the really cool thing is the level of detail and attention that the developers have put into the game. You can see like little birds flying around. If you look carefully, you can see little lions and cheetahs and stuff running around in the wild territory. You can see kind of people milling about. These people are currently dancing on this cultural district. Trying to see if there's any good, because I have seen like herds of animals before, which was really, really cool. I think it might be about time to consider buying some luxuries from these guys. They're a little bit hesitant because we're more powerful than them, which is good. Silver is actually quite good for stability. What would I like to get here? Ooh, I like the getting the incense will help pay for future luxuries here. So that's an extra 10 gold per turn to buy an incense. So as long as we can maintain this relationship here, we're going to be in great shape. Cool, we built a holy site, which is a world deed, which is actually something I haven't talked about. In addition to these sort of stars that get you fame, there are actually deeds that you can do. So for example, one of them is to build a holy site, and the first person to do this claims the score. So for example, I was the first person to find Mount Roraima, so I picked up 50 fame there, but a couple of other people have found other ones, like Baikal was found by Nubia, so they picked up the points there. Building a wonder gets you points. Having access to every strategic and luxury resource. We've got stuff like circumnavigating the world, setting foot on an uninhabited continent. Discovering writing is actually a achievement, so it may be worth my while here to go ahead and skip over and grab writing real quick, you know. Looks like I have a grievance with the Nubians. They're refusing to allow me to spread my religion. Looks like they're trying to oppress my religion inside their territory, so maybe I have something to say about that. Let's go ahead and click this. So you can see here I'm currently gaining no money from being dominant over other territories, but if I click this button, all of a sudden we're making like nearly an extra 60 gold from the territories that are under my sphere of influence, which is really, really cool. It's almost doubling my gold income. So I built one holy site over here, which is actually giving this place a lot of stability, a lot of influence, and a lot of faith. I could go ahead and build another one of those, because again, remember, these things act... Oh, they don't act like districts anymore. Oh, interesting. They used to. Looks like they might have changed that. But I guess I'll plop down another holy site like on a hill. I like the idea of building holy sites on hills. I don't know. It just seems like a neat idea to me. I don't have another very clean hill somewhere, do I? Ooh, I definitely feel like I should build a holy site next to Mount Roraima, at least as an homage to civilization. To get that +4 faith adjacency from it. But I also need to ask the question, is this really what I want to be doing right now? It could be good for me to go for more Olmec heads. This district has a time limit. I won't be able to build it in the next era. So maybe I prioritize that instead. I don't think I need any more food. I do like these rebalanced numbers up here. These felt like they got out of hand real quick. And they definitely feel a little bit reined in, which I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying this sort of more chilled out experience of building my districts and building up my cities. And I also like how slowly my empire is developing. Again, it felt like it was like super fast development in the original sort of couple of variations of this. Let's claim ourselves a wonder, and I think I like the idea of Pyramid of Giza. So we have to claim it and then finish it before we can actually claim another one. Now this will take 20 turns, so yikes. Let's prioritize getting to work on some more makers districts. But I think that's going to be the end of my very first look here. Let me know if you guys want to see more information of me going through the later eras as well. I love you all very much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.